Captain Du Young stood at the large window of Earth's space station, watching the stars, his dark eyes fixed on the approaching alien ship. It looked like a giant silver fish swimming through space, smooth and shiny. The ship belonged to the Kateri, aliens who thought they were better than everyone else because they had better technology. Du Young straightened his blue uniform and touched the captain's badge on his chest. After 20 years in Earth's Space Force, he had seen many strange things, but today was different. Today, humanity would receive its first alien warship. "Captain, they're ready for you in the main hall," said a young officer named He Newell. She was the station's best engineer, even though she was only 30 years old. Her black hair was tied back in a neat bun, and her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Thank you, He Newell. I suppose we shouldn't keep our guests waiting," Du Young said with a small smile. He knew the Kateri hated to wait. They thought waiting was for less advanced species. The main hall was huge, with a ceiling that reached up 50 meters. The walls were made of strong, clear material that showed the stars outside. 300 people stood in neat rows, all wearing their best uniforms. They were there to watch humanity receive this gift. The Kateri delegation walked in. They were tall, with scales that shimmered like mother of pearl. Their leader, Ambassador Tech, moved with the smooth grace of a snake. 2 guards followed him, carrying what looked like fancy walking sticks. But Du Young knew better. Those were energy weapons that could melt through steel. "Captain Du Young," Tech said, his voice smooth but somehow cold. "We are pleased to present humanity with this token of our goodwill." The way he said goodwill made it sound like he was talking to a child. A large screen on the wall lit up, showing their gift. It was a warship, but it had clearly seen better days. Its hull was scratched and dented. Some parts looked like they had been patched up many times. Du Young heard some people in the crowd whisper in disappointment. "This is the Phoenix's shadow," Tech continued. "While it no longer meets our fleet standards, it should be adequate for your needs." His scaled lips curved in what might have been a smile, but looked more like a smirk. Du Young kept his face calm, even though he felt angry inside. The Kateri weren't giving them a gift. They were giving them their trash. But he remembered what his grandmother used to say. Someone's trash can become another person's treasure. "We thank you for this generous gift," Du Young said, bowing slightly. He saw Tech's scales ripple with amusement. The ambassador probably thought humans were simple creatures who didn't understand they were being mocked. After the ceremony, Du Young called a meeting in his office. He Newell was there, along with weapons officer Jai Yun, a quiet woman who knew more about guns and explosives than anyone else on the station. "Well," Du Young said, looking at the detailed scans of their new ship on his computer screen, "what do you think?" Jai Yun spoke first, her voice soft but excited. "The weapon systems are old, but that's not necessarily bad. Old sometimes means simple, and simple means we can understand it better." He Newell nodded eagerly. "The engine room is huge. The Kateri probably think it's inefficient, but that gives us space to work, to add our own ideas." She pointed to several areas on the screen. "Look here and here. We could add human technology to these spaces." Du Young listened as his officers talked. The more they spoke, the more he began to see possibilities. Yes, the ship was old. Yes, it was damaged. But it was theirs. "I want a full inspection," he said. "Every bolt, every wire, every pipe. I want to know everything about this ship." The Kateri provided maintenance manuals, He Newell said, holding up a tablet. "But they're written as if they're explaining things to children. It's actually helpful. They explain everything in basic terms." "They think we're stupid," Jai Yun said quietly. "That could be useful. People who think you're stupid don't guard their secrets very carefully." Du Young smiled. "Exactly. Now, I want you both to pick your teams. Best engineers, best weapons specialists. People who can think differently, who aren't afraid to try new things. Over the next few days, Humans swarmed over the Phoenix's shadow like ants on a fallen fruit. They opened every panel, tested every system, and made detailed notes about everything they found. The Kateri watched from their own ships, probably expecting the humans to break something. Instead, they saw careful, methodical work. They didn't know that every night, Du Young's team met to share what they had learned and make plans. The quantum core is interesting, He Newell said during one of these meetings. She had grease on her face and looked tired, but her eyes were bright. It's not broken, just old. The Kateri think it's too weak to be useful, but that's because they only use it one way. I think we could modify it. Modified how? Du Young asked, leaning forward. Well, you know how we use fusion power on Earth. Everyone thinks fusion is primitive compared to quantum power, but what if we combine them? The quantum core could make the fusion reaction more efficient, and the fusion reaction could give the quantum core more power to work with. Jia Yun, who had been quiet until now, suddenly sat up straight. If you could do that, I could make the weapons work better too. The Kateri removed most of the energy weapons, but left the mounting points. We could install our railguns there. Railguns? Du Young asked. Wouldn't those be too simple compared to Kateri weapons? Jia Yun smiled, something she rarely did. Simple isn't always bad. Energy weapons need huge power sources and complicated targeting systems. But a railgun, it just needs electricity and good aim. If He Newell can give me enough power, I can make these railguns do things the Kateri never thought possible. Du Young looked at his officers, He Newell with her grease-stained face and clever ideas, Jia Yun with her quiet confidence and deep knowledge. He thought about all the humans working on the ship right now, each bringing their own skills and ideas. The Kateri had given them this ship as a joke, thinking humans were too primitive to do anything useful with it. They didn't understand that humans had spent their entire history taking things apart, putting them back together, and making them better. All right, Du Young said, standing up. Let's show the galaxy what humans can do with scrap metal and determination. He Newell, start working on your fusion quantum hybrid system. Jia Yun, design your railguns. I'll handle the politics and keep the Kateri from looking too closely at what we're doing. As he walked back to his quarters that night, Du Young stopped at a window to look at the Phoenix's shadow. In the starlight, its scratched and dented hull didn't look so bad, like an old warrior waiting for one more battle. They think they gave us trash, he said quietly to himself. Let's show them what humanity can do with trash. The next morning, work began in earnest. He Newell's engineering team started carefully taking apart the quantum core, while Jia Yun's weapons specialists measured and planned where their railguns would go. Du Young wrote reports for Earth's government, explaining what they were doing in careful diplomatic language that wouldn't worry the politicians too much. The Kateri ambassador visited once, probably expecting to find the ship in pieces. Instead, he found organized teams of humans working efficiently, with no signs of the chaos he had expected. Du Young saw confusion in the ambassador's eyes, but also the first tiny hint of worry. Good, Du Young thought as he watched the ambassador leave. Let them worry. Let them wonder what we're doing with their cast-off ship. Soon enough, they would find out what humanity could do with a little scrap metal and a lot of determination. The Phoenix's shadow floated in space, silent and dark. But inside, hundreds of humans worked, planned, and built. They weren't just fixing the ship, they were proving that humanity deserved its place among the stars. And this was just the beginning. The first big test came 3 weeks after work began on the Phoenix's shadow. He Newell stood in the engine room, her hands covered in grease, staring at the quantum core. It looked like a big metal egg, glowing with a soft blue light. The Kateri thought it was too weak to be useful, but He Newell saw something different. Hand me that wrench, she said to her assistant, a young engineer named Taiho. He passed her the tool, watching nervously as she opened a panel on the quantum core. Are you sure about this? Taiho asked. The Kateri manuals say we shouldn't modify the core. They say it might explode. Hanul smiled as she worked. The Kateri say a lot of things, but they don't know everything. She pointed to a series of pipes they had installed around the core. See these? We're going to use them to add human fusion technology to the mix. The Kateri never thought to try this because they think fusion power is primitive. In another part of the ship, Jai-Yun was working on her own project. The weapon room was huge, with empty spaces where the Kateri's energy weapons used to be. Now those spaces held something new, railguns designed by humans. The math is perfect, Jai-Yun explained to Captain Du-Young, who had come to check on her progress. She showed him a computer screen filled with calculations. These railguns will fire metal projectiles at speeds the Kateri never thought possible. And because Hanul is giving us more power from her modified engine, we can make them even faster. Do-Young nodded, but he looked worried. The Kateri ambassador is coming tomorrow for an inspection. How do we explain all these changes? Jai-Yun's quiet voice held a note of amusement. We tell them the truth, but not all of it. We say we're installing simple weapons because we can't understand their advanced technology. They'll believe that because they think we're primitive. The next day, Ambassador Tech arrived with his usual group of guards. Du-Young met them at the ship's entrance, keeping his face calm and respectful. We hope you'll be pleased with our progress, Du-Young said, leading them inside. We've been very careful with your generous gift. The ambassador's scales shimmered as they walked through the corridors. Other aliens might have missed the signs, but Du-Young had learned to read Kateri expressions. Tech was surprised that the ship looked clean and organized, with humans working efficiently at their stations. They reached the engine room first. Hanul stood ready, her uniform clean despite her long hours of work. She had hidden the more interesting modifications behind panels that looked like normal maintenance covers. As you can see, she explained, pointing to various displays, we've managed to get the quantum core working at basic levels. We're using some of our own technology to help support it, since we don't fully understand your advanced systems. Tech's scales rippled with what might have been amusement. Ah yes, your fusion technology. How quaint. But I suppose it's better than nothing. Hanul bowed slightly, hiding her smile. The ambassador hadn't noticed that the power readings on the displays were actually much higher than they should have been. The weapons room was next. Jai-Yun showed them the railguns, explaining them in simple terms. Since we couldn't maintain your energy weapons, we installed these instead. They're very basic. They just use electricity to shoot metal objects really fast. How primitive, one of Tech's guards said quietly to another. Jai-Yun pretended not to hear them, but she exchanged a quick glance with Du-Young. After the inspection, Tech seemed satisfied that the humans weren't doing anything impressive with the ship. Well, Captain, he said as they prepared to leave, you've at least managed not to destroy our gift. That's more than some expected. We are grateful for the opportunity to learn, Du-Young replied, bowing again. As soon as the Kateri left, the real work continued. Hanul's team finished connecting the fusion reactors to the quantum core. The combination created more power than either system could make alone. Power that the Kateri had never thought possible from such primitive technology. It's like mixing two different kinds of fuel, Hanul explained to her team. Alone, they work okay. Together, they work amazingly well. The Kateri never tried this because they thought fusion power was beneath them. Jai-Yun's weapons team worked through the nights, installing special computers to control the railguns. These computers were simple compared to Kateri technology, but they were perfect for their needs. Sometimes simple is better, Jai-Yun told Du-Young during their evening meeting. Our railguns don't need fancy targeting systems or special power crystals. They just need good timing and lots of power, which Hanul has given us. The ship was changing day by day. The scratches and dents in its hull remained. Du-Young had ordered them left there on purpose. Let them think we can't fix the outside, he said. It's what's inside that matters. 1 month after work began, they tested the new engines for the first time. The Phoenix's shadow moved smoothly away from the space station, its combined quantum fusion engines purring like a satisfied cat. Power output is 3 times what the Kateri said was possible. Hey Newell reported from the engine room, her voice excited. And we're still not at full capacity. They tested the railguns next, firing at old satellites that needed to be destroyed anyway. The weapons performed perfectly, sending chunks of metal flying at speeds that made them glow like small suns. The Kateri shields are designed to stop energy weapons, Jai-Yun explained as they watched the tests. They've never had to stop something as simple as a piece of metal moving really, really fast. Du-Young stood on the bridge, watching his crew work. They had taken a ship that the Kateri considered trash and made it into something new. Something powerful. Something uniquely human. The ship's computer systems were a mix of Kateri and human technology. The Kateri parts were incredibly advanced but rigid. They could only do things one way. The human parts were simpler but more flexible, allowing the crew to solve problems in new ways. It's like the difference between a fancy restaurant and a home kitchen, Tahoe said one day. The restaurant has expensive tools that do one thing perfectly, but in a home kitchen, people get creative. They find new ways to use simple tools. The Kateri continued to watch from a distance, probably still amused by the humans playing with their cast-off ship. They didn't understand what was happening. They didn't see that humans had spent their entire history taking things apart, understanding them, and making them better. 2 months into the project, Hey Newell made another discovery. The ship's damaged gravity plating, which the Kateri had said was useless, could be modified to create a new kind of inertial dampening system. The old system only worked one way, she explained to Du-Young. It could only handle normal spaceflight, but our version can adapt to different situations. It will let us make turns that should be impossible for a ship this size. Is it safe? Du-Young asked. Newell grinned. Safe enough, and much better than what the Kateri had before. Sometimes breaking something lets you see how to make it work better. The crew worked harder as they saw their changes paying off. Every day brought new discoveries, new ways to combine human and Kateri technology. The Phoenix's shadow was becoming something unique, not just a repaired alien ship, but a true hybrid of 2 civilizations' technologies. The Kateri think technology only moves in one direction, toward more complexity, Jai-Yun said during one of their evening meetings. They never look back to see if they missed something simple but useful. Du-Young nodded. And that's their mistake. They see our technology as primitive because it's less complex than theirs. They don't understand that sometimes the simple solution is the best one. As the 2nd month of work came to an end, the Phoenix's shadow was almost ready. Its hull still looked old and beaten, but inside it was a marvel of innovation. Human creativity had taken Kateri technology and changed it in ways its original makers never imagined. We should thank the Kateri, Hey Newell said one evening, looking at the ship through the station's window. They gave us exactly what we needed, a chance to prove what humanity can do. Du-Young smiled. Yes, but let's keep that thanks to ourselves for now. The galaxy will find out soon enough what humans can do with a little scrap metal and a lot of determination. The Phoenix's shadow floated quietly in space, looking like nothing more than an old retired warship. But appearances could be deceiving. Inside that battered hull, humanity had created something new, something powerful, something that would soon show the galaxy that sometimes the best gifts are the ones nobody else wants. The alarm woke Du-Young at 3 in the morning. Red lights flashed in his quarters as the station's computer announced. Unknown ships detected entering the solar system. All personnel to battle stations. Du-Young rushed to the command center, still pulling on his uniform jacket. The main screen showed 15 ships approaching Earth. They weren't Kateri vessels. These ships were darker, with sharp edges that made them look like angry sea creatures. Pirates, said Jai-Yun, who was already at her station. The Crimson Blade Gang. They're famous for attacking worlds that just joined the galactic community. Hanul burst into the room, her hair messy from sleep. The Kateri Defense Fleet is moving to intercept, she reported, pointing to green dots on the screen that showed the alien ships. Everyone watched as the Kateri ships, with their advanced technology, moved to fight the pirates. The Kateri were confident. Their ships were the most advanced in this part of space. But something was wrong. The pirates didn't run away. Instead, their ships split into smaller groups, moving in ways that confused the Kateri targeting systems. The pirate ships were older models, but their crews knew how to use them in ways the Kateri hadn't expected. "They're winning," Taiho said in disbelief as they watched another Kateri ship retreat with heavy damage. "The pirates are actually winning." Do Young looked at the tactical display. The pirates were pushing the Kateri ships away from Earth, opening a path straight to the planet. Then he looked through the window at the Phoenix's shadow, floating quietly nearby. "Hanul," he said, "is our ship ready to fly?" "The engines work," she replied. "We haven't tested everything in combat, but—" "We don't have a choice," Du Young interrupted. "Earth is defenseless. We have to try." 10 minutes later, they were aboard the Phoenix's shadow. The bridge crew worked quickly at their stations, starting up systems that were a unique mix of human and alien technology. "Engine room reports ready." Hanul's voice came through the speaker. "The quantum fusion core is running perfectly. Weapons are online," Jai-Yun reported from her station. "All railguns charged and ready." Do Young sat in the captain's chair, looking at his crew. They were scared. Anyone would be. But they were also ready. They had built this ship with their own hands, modified it with their own ideas. They knew every bolt, every wire, every system. "Launch," Du Young ordered. The Phoenix's shadow moved away from the station smoothly. Its engines, which the Kateri had thought were too weak to be useful, now purred with power from Hanul's hybrid system. "Pirates have noticed us," Jai-Yun reported. 3 ships breaking off to intercept. The pirate ships approached quickly. They probably thought the Phoenix's shadow was an easy target. It looked old and damaged after all. That's exactly what Du Young had hoped for. "Hanul, give us full power to engines," he ordered. "Jai-Yun, prepare the railguns. Let's show them what this ship can do." The first pirate ship fired an energy beam at them. But the Phoenix's shadow moved in a way that should have been impossible for a ship its size, the modified gravity plating letting it turn almost like a fighter craft instead of a warship. "Target locked," Jai-Yun announced calmly. "Firing railguns." The railguns fired with a deep boom that echoed through the ship. There was no bright energy beam, no fancy light show, just simple pieces of metal, accelerated to incredible speeds by electromagnetic power. The pirates had good shields, the best money could steal. But those shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not solid objects moving at near light speed. The railgun rounds punched through their defenses like they weren't even there. "Direct hit," Jai-Yun reported as the first pirate ship's engines exploded. 2 more ships approaching from the left. "Hanul, can we get more speed?" Du Young asked. "Oh, we can do better than that," Hanul replied, and Du Young could hear the smile in her voice. "Watch this." The Phoenix's shadow suddenly spun on its axis, using the modified gravity plating in a way the Kateri had never imagined possible. The maneuver let them dodge enemy fire while bringing their railguns to bear on both approaching ships at once. More railgun rounds flew through space. 1 pirate ship lost its weapons, another its engines. The pirates had expected an easy target. Instead, they found themselves fighting something they didn't understand. "Captain," Taiho called from his sensor station, "the main pirate fleet is starting to turn toward us. They're changing their attack plan." Do Young smiled. The pirates had realized that the old, beaten-up ship was actually a threat, but that meant they would now face the full power of what humanity had created. The next 30 minutes were intense. The Phoenix's shadow danced through space, moving in ways that confused both pirates and watching Kateri ships. Its railguns fired again and again, sending simple metal projectiles through complex energy shields. Haynul's hybrid engine system gave them more power than anyone had thought possible. Jai-Yun's railguns proved that sometimes the simple solution was the best one. The gravity plating, which the Kateri had said was too damaged to fix, let them perform maneuvers that should have been impossible. 3 more pirate ships fell to their guns. Others tried to run, but the Phoenix's shadow was faster than it looked. By the time the last pirate ship turned to flee, half their fleet had been destroyed or disabled. "Should we pursue?" Jai-Yun asked, her fingers ready at the weapons controls. Do-Young looked at the tactical display. The remaining pirates were running at full speed, not even trying to fight anymore. The Kateri ships were regrouping, their crews probably trying to understand what they had just seen. "No," he said. "Let them go. Let them tell others what happened here. Let them tell everyone what humans can do with a ship that others thought was worthless." The bridge crew cheered as Do-Young gave the order to return to the station. They had done it. They had taken a ship that the Kateri had given them as trash and used it to save Earth from pirates that even the advanced alien ships had struggled to fight. As they docked, Do-Young looked at his crew with pride. Haynul was still in the engine room, probably already planning new improvements. Jai-Yun sat at her weapons station, calmly running tests on the railguns as if they hadn't just won an impossible battle. Through the station's windows, Do-Young could see Kateri ships approaching. Their crews had watched the whole battle. They had seen what humans could do with technology they had thought was primitive. They had learned that sometimes the simple solution, used cleverly, was better than the most advanced technology. "Send a message to the Kateri fleet," Do-Young ordered. "Tell them thank you for their generous gift. Tell them we hope we have used it in a way that brings honor to both our species." As the message was sent, Do-Young smiled. The Kateri had given them a ship they thought was useless. Humans had taken that gift and turned it into something new, something powerful, something uniquely their own. The Phoenix's shadow might still look old and beaten on the outside, but now everyone knew that appearances could be deceiving. Inside that scarred hull was proof that humanity deserved its place among the stars. And this was just the beginning. News of the battle spread quickly through the galaxy. Within days, every spacefaring species had seen the recordings of how a human-modified scrap ship had defeated the notorious Crimson Blade pirates. The Phoenix's shadow became famous overnight, but not for the reasons the Kateri had expected when they first gave it to Earth. Do-Young stood in his office, watching the recordings play on his screen for the 100th time. The Phoenix's shadow moved like a dancer through space, its impossible maneuvers making even experienced ship captains shake their heads in wonder. The simple railguns, which the Kateri had dismissed as primitive, punched through advanced shields like they were made of paper. "Captain," his computer announced, "Ambassador Tech requests a meeting." Do-Young straightened his uniform. "Send him in." The Kateri ambassador entered, his scales shifting with colors that Do-Young had never seen before. Was that embarrassment? Respect? Both. "Captain Do-Young," Tech said, his usual smooth confidence somewhat shaken. "My government has sent me to discuss what happened during the pirate attack." "Of course," Do-Young replied politely. "Please, sit down. Would you like some tea? It's a simple human drink, but sometimes simple things can be surprisingly good." Tech's scales flickered at the gentle reminder. He sat down carefully, accepting the cup of tea with more respect than he had shown anything human before. "We have analyzed the battle recordings," Tech said slowly. "Your modifications to the Phoenix's shadow are remarkable, particularly the engine system. Our engineers cannot understand how you achieve such power from a damaged quantum core." "Haynul would be happy to explain," Do-Young said. "She combined the quantum core with human fusion technology. The Kateri never tried this because they thought fusion power was too primitive to be useful." At that moment, Haynul herself walked in, carrying a tablet filled with engine diagrams. She had been invited to this meeting on purpose, though Tech didn't know that. "Ambassador," she said, bowing slightly, "I was just working on some new improvements to the engine system. Would you like to see how we modify the quantum core?" Tech's scales shifted to a deep blue of interest as Newell began explaining. She used simple terms, clear diagrams, and practical examples. She showed how human primitive technology could work alongside Kateri advanced systems to create something better than either one alone. "This is unprecedented," Tech said finally. "We never considered that less advanced technology could improve our systems. Different doesn't always mean better or worse," Du Young said gently. "Sometimes it just means different, and sometimes combining different ways of thinking leads to the best results." Jadian arrived next, bringing detailed analysis of how their railguns had performed in battle. The Kateri had always focused on energy weapons, making their shields strongest against energy attacks. They had never seriously considered that simple physical projectiles, moving fast enough, could be so effective. The pirates had the same weakness in their shields, Jai-Yun explained quietly. They stole Kateri technology, so they had the same blind spots. They never expected to face weapons that worked in a completely different way. Tech's scales had turned a thoughtful green color. "Your people took technology we considered obsolete and found new ways to use it, ways we had never imagined." He paused, then added something that clearly wasn't easy for him to say. "We may have been hasty in our judgment of human technological capabilities." Over the next few weeks, more visitors came to Earth's space station. Engineers from a dozen alien species wanted to study the Phoenix's Shadow's hybrid engine system. Weapons specialists were fascinated by how the simple railguns had defeated advanced energy shields. Military strategists studied recordings of the battle, analyzing how the modified gravity plating had allowed the ship to move in unexpected ways. The Phoenix's shadow became a symbol of human ingenuity throughout the galaxy. Stories spread about how humans had taken a ship that others saw as worthless and turned it into something remarkable. Some aliens started calling it the human way, taking simple things and finding clever new ways to use them. Newell found herself teaching alien engineers about human fusion technology. Many of them had dismissed fusion power as primitive, but now they saw how it could work together with their more advanced systems to create something better. "It's like cooking," she explained to one group. "You can make good food with fancy equipment or simple pots and pans, but the best meals often come from knowing how to use both." Jai-Yun's railgun design started a revolution in space combat. The Kateri and other advanced species had focused so much on energy weapons that they had forgotten the basic principles of physics. A simple piece of metal, moving fast enough, could be more effective than the most advanced energy beam. "Sometimes the old ways are still good ways," she told military students from various species, "and sometimes combining old and new ways gives you the best results." Do Young received honors from Earth's government and respect from alien leaders, but he was most proud of how his crew had worked together, combining their different skills and ideas to create something unique. 3 months after the battle, a new Kateri ship arrived at Earth's space station, but this time it wasn't bringing a gift. Instead, it carried a delegation of Kateri scientists and engineers who wanted to learn from humans. "We have realized," their leader said to Du Young, "that true advancement comes not from having the most advanced technology, but from understanding how to use technology in new and creative ways." The Phoenix's shadow still floated near the space station, its scarred hull unchanged. Du Young had refused offers to repair the external damage. "Let it stay as it is," he said. "Let everyone see that appearances can be deceiving. Let them remember that humans took something others thought was worthless and made it into something amazing." Inside the ship, work continued. Newell and her team kept finding new ways to improve the engines. Jai-Yun developed better versions of her railguns. The crew learned more every day about how to combine human and alien technology in ways nobody had tried before. Other human ships started incorporating ideas from the Phoenix's shadow. Hybrid engine systems became common. Railguns appeared alongside energy weapons. Ships began using gravity plating in new and creative ways. But the Phoenix's shadow remained special, the first of its kind, the ship that showed the galaxy what humans could do. Its scarred hull became a symbol of human determination and creativity, a reminder that sometimes the best gifts are the ones nobody else wants. "We should thank the Kateri," Du Young said one evening, standing with He Newell and Jai Yun in his office. They were watching the sunset through the station's windows, with the Phoenix's shadow floating in the golden light. "Thank them?" He Newell asked, surprised. "For giving us a broken ship as a joke?" "Yes," Du Young smiled. "They gave us exactly what we needed, a chance to prove what humanity can do. They thought they were giving us trash, but we turned it into treasure. That's what humans do best. We take what we have and make it better." The Phoenix's shadow caught the last rays of the setting sun, its battle-scarred hull glowing like ancient armor. It was no longer just a ship. It was proof that humanity deserved its place among the stars. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest achievements come from the most unlikely beginnings. And somewhere out in the galaxy, the remaining Crimson Blade pirates were telling stories about a strange human ship, a ship that looked like scrap but fought like nothing they had ever seen before. A ship that proved that appearances could be deceiving and that humans were not to be underestimated. The age of human innovation in space had begun.